Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure tonight to be here with Mr. Tom Ferrario. He's a veteran MUFON researcher and field investigator, and he has some very remarkable information to share with us this evening. Without further ado, Mr. Tom, how are you, sir?
Oh, good. I'm doing good. Good to be here. I will say it's been a struggle to get here, as you well know, to do this show. And,
yes, sir.
I've been looking forward to it.
As have I, sir. We spoke at a great conversation, and I think we know that there may have been sort of forces working against getting this information out there because it's, in my opinion, very pertinent for people to know.
Yes, you're exactly correct with that, and I've experienced it before. We're going to touch on things tonight that I will tell you, it's not without an element of risk. There are people that don't want a lot of what I'm going to say tonight known, but I truly feel that the time is right. And for a long time, I wasn't going to speak about this, but people I've worked with in the past, now some of them are gone. And I will tell you that I still have contacts out there that are very knowledgeable what's going on behind the scenes. And the one commonality they're all telling me right now is that something's going to take place shortly that's going to bring forth the false flag scenario. But we'll go into that later. And
absolutely.
But we can speak about Marley Woods, what recently happened. We filmed out there, and we'll go wherever you'd like to go.
Well, that'll be a great place to start, and then we'll swing back around. You can tell people a little of your history because I know you've been inundated in the field for a very long time, and just the short conversation we had, I've learned a lot. So,
yeah.
So the recent film.
I started back in actually '69. I got into this and investigating cases in my area, and I seen how personal it was, how it affected people. And then I got hold of Walt Andrus, one of the founders of MUFON, and he made a section director out of me on the phone and got me connected with Bruce Whitteman, one of the first state directors for MUFON that was in Missouri, actually, in Missouri MUFON, and then it evolved into the Mutual UFO Network. But I worked with Bruce over the years, and we worked back behind the scenes in disclosure projects with the government and with the clergy at times and other individuals that it went full circle. And one of my mentors, like I told you, was Ted Phillips, that worked with Professor Alan Hynek in the Blue Book days. And Ted was a nuts and bolts man like I was in the beginning, and that's where I wanted to be. But Ted went where he had a scientific mind, that he went where the data led, and he accepted facts that they had proven, and he taught me to be like that, and that's where I made a full circle around in this. And so anyway, that was an eye-opening experience, I will tell you. And then Marley Woods, he brought me into project, and some of your viewers may have seen I know they know Ben Hansen and UFO Witness on
For
TV,
sure.
And we just filmed an episode that aired on that. And that was quite an experience, I'll tell you.
It sounds like it. And you got into this field right at the precipice of all this stuff starting to blow up.
Yeah.
As many ufologists know, like the late 60s, early 70s, into the 80s even, and it's even more prevalent today. The amount of sightings and the information that we have now all really started back then. Of course, there was 1947, the big event, but there were many, many sightings across the United States and the world right when you started. And you were one of those, I'd call, founding fathers of the ufologist field.
Well, I can't believe my own age now. Time has gone by so fast, and I've just been so privileged to work with people in the field I've come across, and I just believe my feet, call it divine providence, or my feet were planted in the right place at the right time. And I worked with Ted Phillips, Stanton T. Freeman, Ray Stanford, and then Jacques Vallée over the years, and Chris O'Brien, And the list just goes on and on. I can't believe the list myself sometimes. But I was just so fortunate to work with all these gentlemen. And I will tell you, I met an individual, Bruce Winneman put on the best conferences in the world back in the 80s and 90s. And he brought a woman to St. Louis, Missouri named Dr. Carol Rosen. Now, that name probably doesn't mean a lot to many people anymore, but she was the assistant to von Braun, our rocket scientist, father of our space program. And I had the good fortune to spend a lot of time with her. And she told me so much about, there again, an issue, the false flag scenario that von Braun spoke of and warned people of. So all through my background in ufology, there was a common thread that was coming through. And it was this false flag scenario that was going to happen and occur one day. And basically they warned that there at some point there would be what is deemed as an alien invasion, or an alien race would come to Earth. And when mankind was at its worst, they were going to come in, save mankind, give free energy, technologies, medical cures, and on and on. And judging from the news, and now in the last couple of weeks, I've been getting input from individuals that are telling me that they truly believe that there's an event coming that is going to cause this false flag event to occur. Now, the problem with that is it's really going to be a catastrophic event for mankind that's going to bring mankind down to where they'll be more receptive of this. So, and we'll get into that, but I just would like to go in a little bit of Marley Woods.
Right. Building on that, when did you realize that there was something more to this, the ufology and the alien beings, or perhaps even the whole field?
Yeah, it really got me that when I was dealing out at Marley Woods with Ted Phillips, Ted always showed me, and we were dealing with, he never used the word alien or entity. He always used the word intelligence or phenomena. And there was a definite intelligence out there, which I will tell you, it was, just to put it, the best way I can describe it is, most of the time it had an evil nature to it. It would instill fear. It would use fear as a tool. It would use that tool on people. And so much of what was done out there, from horse mutilation, cattle mutilation, injury to people, just it used fear to manipulate people, instill fear. And all the older individuals out there in Marley had a unique ability over the years. They could had a sense when they knew this stuff was going to start. And a lot of them would look at this as satanic, and they would lock themselves in their houses. At the time when I first got out there, I didn't understand that motivation, or the way they go into that fear. But over the years, spending a lot of time out there with Ted, I got to see this intelligence and pick up on things. And I will tell you that it is all dimensional, frequency driven. And this stuff, when it comes across in the flesh, is as real as you and I. And there again, going into, I'm sure your listeners are acquainted with the Skinwalker Ranch. We were the original owner of that, Robert Bigelow. We were connected with him for a while, and we knew the original owner of the property. And they had the same activity out there as we had. And it truly is a dimensional thing that, as a legend of the Skinwalker, when they come across whatever form they take, when they come across a dimensional boundary, they are as real as you and I are, and they can harm you and do damage. Now, that gets complicated. But overall, there are things that come across. We had physical trace. We picked up on this. We did DNA work. We had physical samples, 16-inch long white hair from cryptids out there, come back, no known match. And so much of the sampling that's done, you hear now, like even in the so-called Bigfoot sightings, they used to throw out that they would come back to sampling, they do DNA, and come back human DNA. And well, they don't throw that out anymore because they're beginning to realize that these things do have a human DNA trace to them. So, and what we've put together over the years is that the religious aspect of this, and I have worked with theologians. I've been lucky in my life. I was raised a Catholic. I fell away from that church for a long time and never expecting in a million years that ufology and my contacts would bring me back full circle into this. But I had the great privilege in St. Louis, Missouri, part of the original UFO investigators and people that did research. There was a man named the Reverend John Schrader there that I learned so much from. And he taught me of the biblical aspect of this. And at the time I filed it away. I didn't want to use there or go there, but it was so useful. And over the years, even as a boy, I had a great friend, a Franciscan friar. His name was Father Ildefonse. And I met individuals, and you know, I've had Dr. Arnold Murray, and of course I followed Malachi Martin, which you used to probably familiar with the Art Bell show.
Yes, Malachi Martin, very well.
Yeah, Malachi Martin, and so much of their work inspired me. And another individual I'm dealing with now, I wish I could give his name, but there again the safety aspect of this. But he was a very wealthy individual. His family sent him as a seminary student to Rome in the Vatican. He actually, because he actually knew 3 ancient languages, he knew ancient Hebrew, Koine Greek, and Aramaic, and he spoke those fluently. So they put him down.
That's remarkable.
In the Vatican. Yeah, that's quite an accomplishment at any age. And
yeah, speaking biblical languages.
Oh yeah, and reading and being fluent. But he learned that when he was a seminary student, they made use of him, and there again, our government. I'll go into that, but our government works hand in hand to this day. I will tell you, there are agencies of our government that still work with the Vatican, and they don't want this known. Believe me, but they learned compartmentalization from the Vatican. They learned how to keep secrets from the very beginning. And but anyway, they had a problem. You know, the Vatican has 20 miles of catacombs underneath it and something like 55 miles of bookshelves with ancient manuscripts.
That's exactly right.
And these things have a problem all the time with mold, and they're falling apart. So they bring in seminary students to go through these pieces of work, and they'll only get a page, a paragraph at a time, and decipher it, put it down, and they're out of there. Now, as a process, some of these seminary students afterwards, they communicate with one another and they put things together, unfortunately for the Vatican, or fortunate for us. And this individual I knew was one of these, and he also told me that they have a process in the Vatican that, now this is something that most people don't know, but if you're 75 years of age or older, and it's not like they grab people off the street. If you're a priest or a brother and you're 75 years of age or older, and you choose to do this work, they bring these people in, and they'll sign statements, and virtually what they're doing is when they go into this mode down in the Vatican and they work, and they get to see the whole picture and decipher things and put this all together in a new manuscript and bindings. But the thing about this is these individuals, they're 75 years of age, they sign an agreement. When they go in there, at the end of the day, they're taken out. There are buildings housed around the Vatican that house these individuals, and they virtually the rest of their life, they never have contact with the public again. So that's a little bit of insight to the degree of how this is kept secret. So that's
going through a lot of trouble, to keep it secret. You're right.
Yeah. Now you can only imagine why. And but the one thing I will tell you that I've learned from this individual and from others, like the false flag, even from Von Braun and other people in ufology I've talked to, the basic structure of what is going to happen is the false flag scenario is what these manuscripts, it's in the manuscripts that this is going to occur one day when mankind is at its worst. And what this is, and here again, I will tell you, ufologists that I know and friends of mine will throw rocks at me for going there, but that's okay. I'm not trying to sell anything. They can make up their own minds. I'm just telling you what I've decided over the years and the knowledge and what I've seen that explains it all in my mind. And if I have to put my money in anybody, I'll put it on these individuals. And that the false flag scenario will come as an alien race, and they're not even honest about that. It's an intelligence. It is interdimensional. It comes across. It is evil because it tries to persuade us that they're going to save mankind, and believe me, their motivation is not our welfare. It is everything but. And some people in religious aspect call this, they call these individuals, and the closest thing I can come to calling these, if I had to name them, would be the fallen angels. Now, that has a whole pedigree behind that explains a lot of this. And of course, the fallen angels, they don't have wings. They look like you and I, and they're the full pattern of us. So don't expect these things to come down with wings or horns or little green men or gray. That's part of what gives them the authority and will be able to fool most of mankind because they look similar to us. And a large portion of this could come as a landing event. It could come as they've been working in our labs since 47 and working with technologies, free energy. It goes on, integrated circuit. And I will tell you, working with Ted Phillips, after the crash at Roswell 47, he was exposed to crash debris, and it did happen. It's real. And we gained a lot of technologies from that. And they actually, at that time, we weren't progressing the way they thought we would. They actually came in, had individuals working in some of our labs. Now, that's a little known. That's a little known fact, but this all goes into like I said, the false flag scenario. That it's going to come about, and in the whole world, if you question this, I mean, your own family is going to think you're crazy because they'll save mankind, they'll feed medical cures, technologies, free energy, and I truly believe that we're not far from that event that's going to cause this to happen. So that's just a little bit of over the years what I've gathered in what I call the false flag scenario. And I will tell you that Bruce Whitteman and myself, we worked with people in the government at times. They were going to start the process of disclosure. And they had planned even to do a news media in MUFON at Area 51 back before 9/11 hit. And they called it off after 9/11. And I understand that. But now I don't think they were going to show us everything back then. But I think there's some individuals in the government that are good and they wanted to start the process. But most of what's there now, I will tell you, is there to deceive us. And that's hard for me to say, but that's why so many of my friends are looking for disclosure. And, when they see the tic tacs on the individual on the Navy had released, and they expected full disclosure, And I told them at that point, you know, they'd ask me, what do you think, Tom? And I'd say, you're never going to see disclosure because of what all it entails. And they'd get mad at me. And they, well, the Navy showed this footage. Yeah. I mean, how can
I don't see there being full disclosure because there'd be too much to go into it. And it would be better if, like you said, the false flag happens and then you work backwards from there.
You're exactly right. And how can they disclose, you know, since 47, the lies that's been going on and the, you know, deception, plus the subject matter of this. Uproar. There's no way they can release this. And I told individuals, I've seen this all my life, you know, disclosures coming and they take a step forward and take 2 steps back. And, you know, then the Navy footage now, they even came out with a statement that they had materials not of this earth. Well, they kind of recanted on that. Then they said now they're starting to say, well, some of the Tic Tac footage, they think now it's a drone footage, you know, and they're trying to explain it away because other individuals in this don't like the fact that they came forward this much. So there's always that fight. And Bruce and I worked with an individual. Our contact name with this individual was Red. And he was a real deal. He was a nice gentleman that fed us information. At one point, we even met with him. We even made a trip to Quantico with disclosure. They were supposed to give Bruce some things and talk to us. And we waited 4 hours and they changed their mind. Then they called it off. And they've done that with individuals in the media all since 47, you know. Rod Serling had that. And, you know, he made a very good documentary. And I urge everybody, he made a documentary called UFOs, It Has Begun. And I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've heard of it, but I've never personally seen it. I heard that it was giving real information of what was taking place.
Actually, this is actually a copy of it. And Rod Serling did that. And the thing behind the story, behind that, the backstory was, there again, he was an individual that was promised actual camera video footage of a landing event with the craft and our contact with these individuals. And he started production of this movie. And at the last minute, the government pulled back and he went ahead with it. And he did a very great factual documentary. It was as good as he could do without their participant in it. And, you know, and Rod even went ahead then, and you probably remember his old show, The Twilight Zone.
Absolutely.
And he made an episode of that. He kind of used this episode to stick his finger in the government's eye, and it was called To Serve Man. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that particular one, no.
I'll just give you a short synopsis of what it was. Basically, it was a scientist, an alien presence came to Earth in a disc. They had a large book to serve man. The scientists, they were trying to decipher the language. They couldn't decipher it. The alien technology, the alien gave the world free energy, medical cures, just technologies to increase food production, just made Earth a utopia. And then at the very end, the scientist is going on a vacation back on one of their ships to have a vacation on their planet. And his assistant comes running and she said, we deciphered the language. And To Serve Man isn't a scientific journal. It's To Serve Man. He said, it's a cookbook. Now, I'm not saying that the motivation is that, but that was Rod Serling's way of bringing this forward. And what he knew personally, that was his way of getting this information out. So it goes on and on from there, I will tell you.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack already. I want to circle back to just a brief statement you made. You said the so-called Bigfoot encounters. Yes. What, from your experience in the field, do you believe them to be?
I absolutely believe them to be remnants of the Nephilim that come through. Now, the the cryptids, you'll find so many of the cryptids virtually in ufology and you know, even the paranormal. So many of the cryptids, I truly believe, have the ability, when they come across whatever you're looking for, whatever type of strange cryptid you have in your mind or you speak of, whatever you're looking for, that's what they'll come across, and that's what they'll be. And what is your greatest fear, they'll take on that shape. Now, the Bigfoot is a little different, I truly believe, entity. The Bigfoot, because so many times now they'll get Bigfoot hair sampling, they'll do DNA, and they'll have human DNA mixed with this. Now that absolutely, in my mind and biblically, that denotes that these things are the Nephilim, the remnants of the giants that are there. They have the ability to transgress the dimensional boundaries at will. That's why even the Native Americans call these things the ghost of the woods. They can step through and back and forth. If they don't want to be seen, they won't be seen. And I truly believe they have the ability to work people. And but I really think that they are the remnants of the Nephilim, the giants that you heard about biblically. And
right, Book of Enoch speaks very plainly about them. And also, it would make sense in the fact that in the Book of Enoch, it spoke of these angels that left their first estate, also mixing these animals. They basically perverted nature, creation, mixing fish with a bird and breeding. The insinuation is they were breeding with not just humans, but also animals.
You're absolutely right, spot on. And you know, they're, as predicted in the Bible, at the end times, or when this event, I believe, is going to happen, they predict, you know, as in the day of Noah, and you know, Enoch was the great grandfather to Noah. So there again, you have that lineage, and you can get into the Apocrypha, that so many books are, because organized religion didn't want to relinquish any bit of knowledge, which is power. That's why they kept the Apocrypha out, the Book of Enoch. And I will just tell you, biblically, there's a book called the Strong's Concordance. I don't know if you've ever heard of, but
yes, sir. I'm actually a Bible student, so the Strong's Concordance, and it's very, very important when you look at what the original language is. Yeah, absolutely. People read, and I always encourage them not just to read, but to study.
Yes. And it says it all. It takes it apart, like you just said. And I will tell you, I've worked with these people that know these ancient. They've transcribed and deciphered the original documents, not the King James version of the Bible. And I do believe the Bible it truly is a dimensional, wonderful book that at the time mankind could not have produced that piece of work back in the ancient cultures that came forward in. It just was impossible. The knowledge and the perfection that's in that. And when you hear it transcribed from the original, let me tell you, there's so much in that book that I thought I knew the Bible growing up, you know, and I knew nothing. But it's so beautiful. I'm right there with you. It's so knowledgeable, and to this day. And the original descriptions, and when you go back to the ancient text and you decipher this from the original writings, it just blows your mind away. And some of the best descriptions of UFOs and what we're dealing with in ufology and the paranormal and everything we deal with now, this book dealt with and explains it. So it really is a wonderful source to go back to and to learn. And like I say, it's an interdimensional book, I truly believe, for us. And there again, you know, so many people, 1,000%. So many people talk about, you know, aliens and being interdimensional beings. And the thing you always have to wrap your mind around is that we ourselves are interdimensional beings right now in this body on this side. And because we were put on this side, we were given the authority on this side. Now, what comes across interdimensionally doesn't have the authority to be here. I will tell you. Now, the thing that's the double-edged sword about that is, I will warn people, you know, when you get into paranormal, even ufology, you have the authority what comes across. Now, when you call upon this stuff and you ask them to come forward and you're looking for this, you know, simple thing like people go on ghost haunts and even things like Ouija boards, which open doorways, I will tell you that is very real. When you ask for this stuff to come across or you look for it, you're giving it the authority to be here. And then once you've given up that right, you don't have the power over it. So you always have to remember that. And it's a double-edged sword, I will tell you.
You know, and it's just, and coming from the cryptid side of things, being a cryptid field investigator, I'm just blown away by the similarities. And you said something very, very interesting earlier, that this stuff is actually written in ancient texts that you can find down in that Vatican basement.
Yes.
And so I mean, it's predicted way back then.
Yeah, I mean, and the Vatican has, you know, the Library of Alexandria was supposed to burn, and I will tell you that a lot of those
I just got chills.
Yeah,
I've always said that the Library of Alexandria was down there. But you don't, when you conquer a nation, you don't destroy the knowledge of that nation. You take the knowledge of that nation, which can only propel you forward. And when they said the Library of Alexandria, which that's almost misleading, it was a university of a kind, you know, the greatest minds. And there was the Library of Alexandria, but there was also one in Egypt. There were these universities set up to propel man's knowledge. And these ancient texts were passed down through these. I don't see them, maybe they burned the building, but I don't see them burning the books.
Yeah, there's, you know, if I had one place on earth to go, I would go with some of my friends if I could down there, because that's where it's at. That's where the written documentation is. And
yes, sir.
But it's all there, and you know, you can just imagine what is in 55 miles of bookshelving and climate controlled rooms now. And it's not a movie, believe me, it's real down there. And I've talked to individuals that have been there. And, but I will tell you that even, like I said, the government learned compartmentalization, how to keep secrets. The other side of that coin is that the Vatican, they will handle the people that are a threat to them. They will deal with, and as our government will, and our government learned that also how to handle that situation. So it is a risk factor there that they don't want known, and but I believe that their hands are being forced now. A lot of this is going to happen, and but you know, that's not to say everybody involved in this is bad. There's good people involved, but the false flag scenario is not a good thing, and that is how disclosure will come about. But so, you know, I always urge people, when this happens, question everything, know that you have the power over this, you know, and you have the authority over this. And I will tell you that in ufology, the one thing that the question in my mind from a young man dealing, I was made aware of so many crashes as in Roswell in 47. And I worked a crash. I was at Aztec, New Mexico with Ted Phillips and Stanton Freeman and some others, researchers there. There was a crash there. And there was one in Missouri, Cape Girardeau, and I can come up with 13 different names. But the question in my mind with these people was, if this technology is so great, why on earth are there this many crashes? You know, it doesn't make sense. And
exactly,
I had it explained to me as a child, and I've hung on to it all these years to this day. They told me, they said, well, Tom, you got to think of it in the right terms. What these crashes that happen, he said, what happens when a young man steals a car, makes a poor decision, he steals a vehicle? A lot of times he can't drive that, doesn't know how to drive that vehicle very well, or there's something chasing him. Now, they told me, he said that that's exactly what happens with most of these crashes, that they come across that dimensional boundary with a craft, with a disc, and they don't have the authority to do that. They don't have the capabilities, because when they come across to this dimension, these things are inherently unstable for a time. And I will tell you, they are being chased in various forms and ways. So that, and all these years, that was the only thing that made sense to me, was that they're being chased, they can't handle this vehicle, and they crash. Because if it's such a superior technology, why would there be so many crashes? So
then that makes sense. That's a question I never really asked myself, but the way you explained it is perfect. And if this is, and I believe it wholeheartedly, you just confirmed from our first conversation in this show that these fallen angels, for lack of a better word, these interdimensional, this interdimensional intelligence that the Bible says is just a little bit above man, just a little bit more superior than man, that if something's going to be chasing them, then the opposite of the fallen angel might be, you know what I mean? Like, so I like to encourage people that way when they see these kidnappings, for like, I don't call them abductions, they're kidnappings, that there is a force that is working for the good of us as well, as opposed to this evil, deceptive force that's coming against us. And I know that, back when they first started making contact, they said they were from Venus and Mars.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when our technology got good enough to look past that, they said, oh, well, we're from Zeta Reticuli, a place we couldn't see just then.
Oh, yeah.
And once we were able to see out that far, they'll be from someplace else. It's deception all over.
Right. Or Alpha Centauri, or, wherever. And,
exactly.
and working in MUFON, I will tell you, working in MUFON, I've dealt with people, and there again, you have to discern when people are telling you things, these strange entities they see, aliens, their technology, they're proven to these people what planet they're from. And this will go into, I will tell you, I've talked to people that strongly believe, and researchers too, I will tell you, that fall into that. They will tell you the family structure of this alien race. They'll tell you what to eat. They'll tell you what planet. They'll tell you it's just all fictitious. And if you fall in that trap and go down, that well, it's deception, and it's well done, and it's as real to these people, and they're not making it up. They're relaying to you what they've seen, what they believe, and so I will tell you, there's researchers that have wrote books on this and made movies, and if I have friends over this, quite frankly, that think I'm crazy, and they want to go down the rabbit hole they've gone down. That's fine. I'm not selling anything. They can do that. But
right.
As,
You're bringing
as myself, and
I respect that.
I just, yeah, it's been a process. I've gained this.
And you're doing it at your own detriment.
I will tell you,
not to interrupt, I'm sorry, but yeah, there was a college professor that I'm sure you're aware of. That he did the same thing you did.
Oh, yeah.
He's saying the same things, that people are experiencing this, but it's almost 1 foot in this interdimensional realm, 1 foot out when they have these experiences. And I forget the gentleman's name. I know that you know who I'm talking about, but a gentleman was killed at the same time in England that had his name. He died in a car wreck, and it was one of these strange type of things. But he was bringing the information as it seemed to be, instead of, like you said, going down their own rabbit hole, and maybe even unbeknownst to themselves, they're helping to push a certain agenda that's being brought to them, just because they are believing the experience and these sightings and abductions and everything as they are. They're not looking further than that event.
Yeah, right, and it comes with an element of risk. I will tell you. Well, you just sort of you learn to deal with that, and I've lost so many of the people that I've worked with on this, and I just feel I owe it to put this there, and my purpose in doing this after all these years is just to plant a seed, a doubt, and to plant seeds. And if this all goes down, if two people see us and they think, I heard something from this not years ago, I think it'll be now, that mentioned all this stuff, and maybe he was right on part of this. Maybe we shouldn't just go 100% into this without examining it, and question everything. That's my advice to everybody, And
absolutely, and that's wisdom. That's very, very wise advice to give. And from your credentials and your background, you couldn't get any better information. I mean, you've been boots on the ground for a very long time, and some of your friends and fellow investigators have, like I said, built a foundation upon which ufology stands today.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. And there again, it's a lot of it was not of my doing that I would have these opportunities. I believe I was guided, and I will tell you that it is so real. And there were people, we just filmed at Marley Woods, Site 2 and 3 on UFO Witness with Ben Hansen. Let me tell you the whole story that occurred when we filmed this. I will tell you that just like Skinner, the intelligence there did not want us to bring rangers on. And from the get-go, when the gentleman that owned rancher on Site 2 and 3 was in his 80s. He was in good health, and he agreed to do this with us. He trusted me, and when we brought on Ben Hansen and Melissa Tittle on UFO Witness, and I will tell you the episode of that is Nordics in the Cube, and I urge you to go see that. Travel Channel, I believe. Yeah, and
absolutely, the Nordics
it's a great episode, and everything on that. Yeah, and everything that happened on that, I tell you, happened that night. And the what happened before that and afterwards, I mean, the property owner called me 2 days before we were going to get there. He said the water tank blew out on the property, that we wouldn't have running water or restrooms. I said, well, okay. Then he called me back the next day. He said, we've had almost biblical rains out here that washed out. This is a 1,200 acre going onto a 700 acre ranch on Site 1. It's gravel roads, gated community, nothing in there or out there, with the property owner knowing it. And it's all dirt roads, most of it on there. So he said, we've had rain out here like I've never seen. Just about washed all those out. I want to go ahead with this, Tom. And I said, I really do want to try it. So it was a struggle then to get everybody on there without getting stuck in around. And then the property owner, we were going to film that night. He was wanting to be part of so much. And he was such a great gentleman. And he got sick. He got unusually tired and sick, and he had to go home. He couldn't be part of it. So then Melissa and Ben showed up on the property. And from the time they entered the property, they had an uneasy feeling, and they knew something wasn't right. And then they always synchronized their watches, and Melissa had a brand new watch, and her watch stopped. We had equipment failures, battery packs draining as such. So we got on, we started filming. We went on one location, and in a field where the activity was. And then Melissa noticed my hearing is really bad from too many years of a machine shop and that sort of thing. But she was the first one to notice. She tapped Vanity and she said, don't you guys notice this. And she said, all the insect sound, the sounds of the night quit. You could have heard a pin drop, and you just felt like any minute something was going, you had that uneasy feeling that something was going to occur. And then I had a piece of equipment on me. Most of the damage that we incurred out there over the years, cattle mutilations and damage, injury to people, myself included, was of the microwave nature. I had a piece of equipment that was totally devoted to the microwave spectrum to warn us. It had a visual cue, you know, green, yellow to red, and audible cues if you got in danger areas. Then that started going off 3 times into the danger area. I mean, thankfully, just short times, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, no power lines, nothing to explain that. And I told Ben at that point, and I got that on camera a couple of times. I said, Ben, I truly feel with all my heart, this intelligence, it's out here, it knows what we're doing. And I truly believe it's trying to let me know, because I was damaged with microwave, that it's still out here and it's still capable of causing harm. And just to let us know that it was there. And then it went from that. We got up in an old deer stand. Ben had a thermal imaging unit with him. And I had night vision, and he had a crew on the ground, and he started picking up on a circular object. He said, I don't know, Tom, if this is a small animal or what. And I said, well, from my experience with light balls, I said, Ben, I believe it's spherical and it's off the ground. I believe that's actually a light ball coming through a dimensional boundary that we're making the actual temperature differential that's created. And he said, oh, you're right. And he started tracking this. And then all of a sudden his piece of several $1,000 piece of equipment went off. And I said, have a habit of doing this, Ben? And he said, it never has before. And it came back on. He caught it for an instant, and he had a laser pointer. He pointed to it on the ground where it was. His crew headed for that location. They got there, they couldn't see anything, and then this thing just morphed out again. It was gone. So, and I wished, had we had that piece of thermal imaging unit over the years with Ted and everybody, I don't know what we could have picked up on, how many times these things could have been around us that we didn't see till they became visible in our light spectrum, you know, visually. So
absolutely,
it was letting us know it was there. It was very real. And long story short, we had other experiences out there. We called it quits, you know, after approaching 4 a.m. in the morning. The crew, I stayed, I don't get out there that much anymore as I should. So the crew left, and I was the last one there. I went over everything. I made sure the cabin that's on site 2 and 3 was locked up. The lights were off for the property owner that went home sick. And then again, like a poltergeist type activities we've had in Marley, I get a call later on, a couple days later. The property owner felt better, and he went out there to check everything. And he said, Tom, he said, I really hate that the guys, everybody, that they left the cabin open, the doors wide open, and all the lights on. And I said, you know me. And I said, I was the last one out there, and I can guarantee you, when I left, the doors were locked and the lights were off. So there again, you have that. And then the part that affects me to this day, several weeks later, the man's family contacted me. The property owner had had a stroke and passed away. So,
oh wow!
And then it just goes on from that. So I will tell you, it's
Tom, I have
real.
to tell you, just from everything you just said, and I listened very intently, because being a field investigator for these cryptids, every single element, the stuff, the noise of the night, the bugs and things going away, the critters, it's almost like you're in a vacuumless pocket. Yeah, that's what we spoke about. Every single element of what you experienced then. I got chills up and down my arms. is what I've experienced and other field researchers have experienced, the batteries draining,
Yes.
the high levels of energy in the air. So
Yes.
I think that's way too many coincidences to be a coincidence. You spoke of Skinwalker Ranch, which had, it was an amalgamation of all these strange things, UFOs, cryptids. Most places we go that have a high congress of that activity, I mean, do you think that it's certain places where this stuff sort of congresses? And
I believe the history of this, and we had Jacques Vallée was out there and worked with us, and he even made the statement he thought that Marley had a better chance for high strangeness than even Skinwalker, and we worked with the people at Skinwalker, and we experienced things out there, and I will tell you just a little bit of the backstory on this. With Skinwalker, I know the producers of that show, and they were going to start another show, and after Skinwalker, a spinoff of that, and the property owner of Site 1 didn't want to take part in this that night, and he contacted me after the show it aired on the Travel Channel. He called me up at 10 o'clock at night, and he's in his 80s too, and he said, "Tom, I love the show. I would like to do something now in my place like that." And I told him, I said, well, it's almost like fate, because I was asked by the producer of Skinwalker, they want to do a spinoff, and they would like to come out to Marley Site 1, where he built the structure for Ted Phillips. Our office was out there. And he said, I would love to do that, Tom. And I said, well, let me get back to these people and see if you're game for this, we'll do this. And I asked the property owner, though, I said, now you realize if I set this up and we go forward with this, we're going to do this, and you're on board with this, and everything's okay to come out and film with you and everything. And he said, I don't want to be on camera, but yeah, I want it done out at my Site 1. So I said, okay. So I went back to the producer of the new show. We were going to do it, and 2 weeks before we were due to be out there and start filming, the property owner of Site 1 called me and said, Tom, I hate to do this to you, but I got to tell you, it's all off. I'm never going to have a camera on my place. And I said, why? You realize what these people have made an investment. They want to do this. He said, I know. He said, I hate to do this, but we're not going to do this. He said, I spoke with my family. They don't want the risk of people coming out to our ranch, finding a place. And I spent 2 hours, 3 hours speaking with a man off and on. And I think I got to the bottom of what happened. I think a lot more went on back there. I think when you interject new people or a presence in these ranches, bad things happen. So
yes, sir.
Speaking with a man, I actually believe some things occurred. And he said, I don't want anybody hurt on my place. It's off. He said, you can come back on, or the team members we had, but as far as strangers, I don't want a camera ever being on this place or any strangers. So you can imagine the place that put me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just remarkable to me that the place, I mean, you just described Skinwalker Ranch, this area that you went to.
Yes.
With the high levels of activity and everything. And it makes you think how many people, how many property owners and ranch owners, and like my main research area is a conservation area that all the locals are afraid of. They say it's haunted, which there are, poltergeist activities happening, rocks throwing themselves, voices and screams coming from the woods, the cryptids, the lights that go through the trees. I mean, it's a whole cataclysm of all these things. Battery draining, as you say. It's remarkable to me how all these fields have been separated.
Yes. And I will tell you, though, here's the flip side of the coin that I'm being made aware of now. Back when I started with Ted, and we started out there around 2000, 2001, Ted was out there actually from around 99. Ted was his first trip out there. But I will tell you, at that time, you had Skinwalker and you had Marley Woods, and maybe one or two other places internationally, even that worldwide. But I will tell you now, I have a very close friend. She's almost like my sister. She's a state director for MUFON now in Missouri. Debbie Ziegelmeyer is her name. She's on the board of directors of MUFON. And way back in the day, her and I started the MUFON dive team. And we actually trained divers for MUFON, and which is a whole nother subject matter. But Debbie,
wow, sounds like an interesting subject matter.
Well, she is the state director for MUFON, and she's made me aware now there are actually 3 places now in Missouri approaching the activity of Marley Woods that has come about in the recent couple years. And it's worldwide. I have another state director I know that's telling me this is happening in his state. I worked with Ted Phillips on Project Moonshaft, and that's a whole nother subject in Slovakia. I'm being told by people I know overseas it's happening there now. And I truly believe this, again, is all part of the false flag scenario. I do believe the dimensional boundaries, which is spoke about biblically, the dimensional boundaries are getting weak. Things are more easily transgressing. And I do believe that's all part of it, that for whatever reason, this is happening more frequent and more dramatic all over the country right now. And that again, is all going to take part in this false flag scenario that's going to come about. I truly believe.
And that's just that is very concerning, honestly, because
Yes.
Again, being in a different field and you know probably better than I do, having done this for so long, everybody tried to keep these fields separate. The cryptozoologists were separate from the ufologists and all that stuff.
And myself really in the beginning.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But when
I
you
will
look at
tell
it
you,
for what it is,
like Ted Phillips, when I started out in this in a rural community and had so many people, and I will go in, my family had experiences at a very young age. I had an experience, and now looking back with what I know that experience was real, but I know what it was, and I'm confident of what it was, but it absolutely is happening more frequent, and it's not what people think it is, believe me. And I did not, when I started investigating UFOs, I was like Ted Phillips. I wanted the nuts and bolts off a structured craft like Ted did. Right. He went out and got pieces. He did soil compaction tests where their landing gear made indentations in the ground, like in Socorro, New Mexico. And that's what when I had a Bigfoot sighting associated with a UFO, I quite frankly wouldn't even investigate it because I didn't want to go there. And I look back at that now, and I know how wrong I was in doing that. But we all go through a learning process. So,
and it, like, again, your wisdom is astonishing to me in this, because and also your courage, because you have to have bravery to step forward like you have with all this, because it's going to step on a lot of toes.
It has
your circle of influence, and in mine, like, you're right, nobody really wanted to go there. I've talked to some of the old schoolers in cryptozoology and the field research for the cryptids, and they said, yeah, I saw balls of light and I saw the Bigfoot disappear, but we can't talk about that. We have to put forth that it's the natural species. We have to study this natural species. Well, if it's disappearing in and out of reality, that's nothing natural.
No. And Ted Phillips, my mentor, told me, he said, Tom, and we actually believed we had 3 locations at Marley of portals, and one in particular that Ted had taken photographs of, actually imagery of things coming in and out of this portal. And Ted said in the beginning, Tom, he said, if I would have said the word portal, I would have just asked you to smack me. I didn't want to go there or even use that word. And he even actually had an outing with Professor Alan Hynek in the beginning, because Alan Hynek, he said, and Jacques Vallée are so ahead of him that, their whole conception of what was going on. Alan even said, this is too simplistic as little gray guys coming from Alpha Centauri. It involves structure. And, you know, Jacques Vallée said, what we see here is not an alien invasion. It is a spiritual system that acts on humans and uses humans. Now, that was Jacques Vallée used to say that and says that to this day.
Wow. And
So,
everybody knows who that gentleman is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he's such a gracious man and such, I mean, a genius in this field. And, but it is all dimensional. And when we worked with him out in Marley, you know, he makes statements, and I hold on to these to this day too, for kind of a guiding light. You know, he said, we had evidence that the phenomena has the ability to create a distortion of the sense of reality or substitute artificial sensations for the real ones. Now, that's quite a statement, but
very much so.
Translating that down is what this intelligence has the ability to make us see what it wants us to see and be whatever we perceive it to be. So that comes from the men that are way above my pay grade, I will tell you.
And that's pure deception. Like there's nothing screams deception like projecting fear, whatever someone believes, that's what they're going to appear to be. So it makes one question, like, what is their actual appearance? Who are they actually?
And you just described, really, with that statement, you know, you've really described it's just evil, what is done. And
yes, sir.
You know, and it just, what comes across doesn't have the authority to be here. And we do have the authority to be here. And in knowing that gives you power over it. Now, like I said,
absolutely.
If you throw it away, if you invite these things across or involve them with you, you're giving them the permission, the authority in doing that to be here. And that when they have that authority and power over you, that's when things happen. That's, you know, so.
Let me ask you a question. And this is based off of your last statement. And do you believe, and this is where my mind's going with it, as far as the field investigations for Bigfoot and other anomalous cryptids, that the attention we give this stuff is sort of empowering it?
You're absolutely right. You know, it empowers it, and it gives them the stature and the attention, and it puts them in the position of instilling fear and using people. And you know, this even gets into, like, I go back to the Bigfoot connection. You know, when we had cryptids out there, we had the strangest things you can imagine. We had 300-400-pound described as polar bear / sloth animals out there,
wow,
walking on hind legs more than all fours, and going through. In one instance, the rancher said he actually seen this thing go through a brand new 4-strand barbed wire fence. Now, when I say go through it, I don't mean, I mean, he literally described it as like it just morphed, it dissolved, and it just melted, went right through this fence without any effort, passed through it. In the process, somehow it left 14, 16-inch white hairs. You know, we took those, we did analysis. Ted had a very good woman that had her own lab, Phyllis Budinger. She did analysis on it, microscopy. And Ted had a friend, they did very crude DNA work in the day. Both came back as no known match. But now when you get in again with the Bigfoot, so many times now that comes back human DNA. And there again, I draw the analogy that I truly believe that the Bigfoot sighting, these things are the remnants of the Nephilim, the giants. They have a different structure in authority and place and different capabilities. And they truly love just working humans. They love instill fear, which they, and you know, I don't have to tell you, you've researched enough of these that so often
they're experts at instilling the fear.
Yeah, they chase. They're known to be this. They run faster than the deer of the woods, and yet when a person's
Right.
running away from it, they can run away from this thing. Well, common sense tell you if these things wanted to capture a human or do some harm to them, it would. They have that capability.
Exactly. But their main goal is
So,
not that. Their main goal is to instill that fear, as you say, which
right,
really does give us an idea of their point of origin. And when we say Nephilim, these are the disembodied spirits of these giants. A lot of people get confused. These disembodied
yes,
spirits that have no right to be judged by God. So they're not going to heaven. And if they can't be judged, they can't go into hell. So they're the
right,
wanderers, as they call them, that just wander the earth. And if these fallen angels
right,
mix with all these different animals and also humans, then it would make sense that these amalgamations of these humanoid looking beasts and monsters would hate us, because they still have hunger, as Enoch says, and they still have the capability to have a mindset that has needs and wants, but they can't fulfill them. So when they see us gluttons, taking not even taking any kind of advantage of some of the things that God's given us as far as our food and whatnot, and really not respecting what he has, I think they have an innate hatred for us. So if they can fool us, trick us in any kind of way, that would, I could see them doing that.
well, you're absolutely right. And you made reference to something earlier, like in the days of Noah, it would come about, and you drew the analogy about the genetic mutations, all the strange animals and creatures back biblically that were, and you look at our own scientific process now. We are again having, it won't even be the fallen angel. We have the ability ourselves genetically to make any kind of monstrosity or type of, you can
Yes,
only
sir.
imagine. I've had friends that have told me things, experimentation that's been done on things with human DNA and animals and even in China and places, labs, you can only imagine what goes on in labs in
Right.
other countries. So
And they
there again, it's
publicly
in
put that out now in China. They've mixed DNA with
yeah,
of monkeys with humans. And if that's happening
yeah.
and they announce that to the public, imagine what they're not announcing they're doing.
Oh yeah. You can. I've heard the whole. I've heard people do a whole documentary on humanzees and but even other creatures, to grow human organs for transplantation. And but we're just dealing in realms that we really shouldn't be there, and no good can really come of a lot of this. And so there again, it's in the day. No, we're approaching. I truly believe that time that's going to cause the false flag scenario that's going to come about. And believe me, what comes about, I just tell people when this all goes down, and I truly believe with all my heart it is, just question it and don't think your benefit, you're not its motivation. Believe me, your welfare is not its motivation for coming here doing this. So I just urge people to question it.
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. And I can't thank you enough for being here. And I'd like to extend an invitation for you to do a return show, because you're just a living well of knowledge of these things.
Well,
And
I will tell you a project, and I'll just throw this out there briefly. Ted worked on a
absolutely.
project in Slovakia called Moonshaft. And it involves this object that was found, a gentleman that was a prisoner of the Nazis that escaped, was hidden in a cave and found this object. And there's several of these objects around the world that I actually believe that that's part of the false flag scenario, what's going to come out of the ground. And we'll do a show on that sometime, believe me.
Sir, that sounds great. And Tom, I'm going to link all your YouTube channel and everything else down in the description below, because I want people to find you and go through all your material, because again, this has probably been the most informative and eye-opening interview I've ever done. I've interviewed hundreds of people, so I do appreciate that, and I can't wait till the next time.
Well, I thank you so much, and I don't have to tell you and I know how hard it was what we went through to get this show up and running tonight. So we've had a lot of
supernaturally so. Yeah. we had some things standing in our way, and that's the last thing I'll say before I send us off. The people that are involved in this field, it's a question really. I've noticed that a lot of people who are deeply ingrained in the research, field research and everything, are even folks who are just casually researching this. There's a lot of negative things that end up taking place in their life. It's almost like a series of bad luck, illnesses. Do you see that in ufology?
Yes. There are physical effects, you know, that people are damaged. And there again, I myself included, you know, I suffered a lot of injury. Ted and I did over actually being hit by a light beam, one instance on Marley. And
wow.
It happens. And the microwave damage is a really scary thing because they're finding out at Skinwalker. I know the producer of that, and they're finding out, you know, they even had a rabbi out at Skinwalker one episode, and they had a lot of success with him being out there. And they've determined microwave is the animal out there, the critter that does the most damage. Is the technology is in the microwave spectrum. And then you get into that gets into the Havana syndrome and what's done to people and the technologies we even have now. But microwave can be used as a very bad weapon, believe me, and it's used on people. So when you get on, you know, it sounds like you're going to have a good evening to do if UFO investigations. But if you get into the real thing, it can be hazardous. Just go into it with that being aware of that, and it is very real. But I just always like to say it's really not what people think it is.
Right. And that's what we try to do here is get to the truth that's right underneath the surface of what everything seems like it is or what it's projected to be. And again, that's why I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have you on, and can't wait until you come back, Tom.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to come back. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.